Martin, now with GDPR and stuff like that, how do you see the tech majors reacting? Do you think this is going to sort of even the playing field a little bit?
Well, I don't think GDPR, it's early days to assess the impact, and we've seen the impact of Cambridge Analytica on Facebook, or rather, I would say the non-impact on Facebook. I mean, certainly from what I've heard and seen, Facebook's advertising revenues, at least to date, seem relatively unimpacted by what we've seen at Cambridge Analytica and all the regulatory issues that have so far been raised. And I have to say that from my perspective, Google and Facebook, Google strongly, and I think Facebook now, given what they've gone through, strongly too. I don't think that was the case maybe before Cambridge Analytica with Facebook. But both companies are making strenuous efforts. I think in the case of Google, at least 10,000 people. In the case of Facebook, maybe as much as 20,000 or more, to monitor the content. And you and I have talked about this for many years. Those companies, in my view, are media companies, certainly as far as their operations are concerned in the areas where GDPR is operative. And as media companies, I think they're responsible, at least in whole or in part, for their content, and I think they're beginning to acknowledge that. Having said that, their scale, and Facebook and Google are amongst the top 5 most highly valued companies in the world, and you put them together with the 2 Chinese companies, you have 7 companies which are worth $500 billion or more, and Apple is the one at the moment that is threatening to hit the $1 trillion mark. But you take this is immense power in those 7 companies. I liken them to the 7 sisters from a century or so ago in the energy business, and we all know the regulatory issues that the 7 sisters faced. And I think it's almost inevitable that there will be regulatory issues surrounding those companies, even the Chinese companies in some way, shape or form, although it might be quite different in terms of nature and impact. But GDPR, certainly in its early stages, to my mind, seems to favour the tech giants. If anything, we've seen the smaller and medium-sized companies withdraw from the European market rather than compete. So whatever comes with GDPR, whatever advantages the big tech companies get from that, there's certainly going to be a big battle in the tech area. And of course, we'll come on, no doubt, in your questions to what's happening with Flipkart and Amazon and Walmart and Alibaba and Tencent.
Should media and advertising agency professionals get their CVs up to date for S4?
Well, they can get their CVs up to date for S4 Capital. I'd be delighted to receive CVs and ideas in relation to S4 Capital if I could be so bold as to make that ad. But having said that, I think there are sufficient opportunities geographically and technologically, and in the areas that not just the technology area, but data and content too. There are sufficient opportunities. There is sufficient upside opportunities. If we're prepared to change and adapt our thinking, there are sufficient opportunities that they don't have to look elsewhere. I mean, I noticed this morning that the banks here in the UK, despite Brexit and despite some of the depressing news around Brexit, a number of the banks announced that graduate applications were up very significantly in the UK. And I think those applications should be up significantly in our industry too. There's no reason to despair, and there's no reason to be negative. There are very significant opportunities, but it does mean that we are going to be subject to significant change. And again, it doesn't matter whether we debate structural or cyclical. One thing we haven't touched on so far is the growth of the consultancies. The consulting companies don't compete head-on with the agencies. They go above the agencies. They go to the CEOs and the CFOs and the CMOs and the CIOs and the CTOs, and they say to them, you're going through significant change. They might describe it as a digital disruption. You're spending a lot of money. Let's look at it as one, and let's see how we can improve your productivity, improve your technological response, digitize your company, transform your company, and at the same time spend less money. And by the way, pay us on the basis of what we save you, which is a very alluring concept. So they go in up here, and we're down here. So what we have to do is to sharpen our tactical response, but also develop our strategic response too at the higher levels of the company. So what S4 Capital will be, amongst other things, looking at is what they can do tactically, for sure, seeing how clients are changing their point of view, how they're looking at things globally and locally and maybe less regionally, how they're looking at local competition, what the Financial Times has called piranha brands, and what others, people in China, call gladiator brands, how new companies in India, in China, in Russia, in Brazil, in Vietnam, in Indonesia, in Colombia, in Mexico, in Argentina, wherever, in Africa, in South Africa, how they're developing their concepts and competing and developing market share. Look at how the clients are developing. Look at how the media is changing, whether it be in relation to technology or GDPR or whatever. Looking at how distribution changes, as we discussed just now, and changing the model. And as I say, it's a question not only of the new stuff, but the old stuff too. How do you rapidly change? And this is, I think, the big issue for the holding companies and the networks. How do they change their traditional model at the right pace? Because, as I've always said, if you want to make an omelette, you have to break eggs. And there's how many eggs do you break in order to make that omelette, if that's the right way of putting it. And the danger is you go too fast, just as the danger is you go too slow. And whilst I was at WPP, we were simplifying the verticals. We were building more client coordination and country coordination and giving it a digital underpinning, whether it be with Hogarth or whatever. That's very simply what the strategy is. And I think that is the strategy, in essence, that most, if not all, of the holding companies are following in one way or another.
Thank you so much. I'll do a longer chat with you some other time. All the best to S4 from all of us over here.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you. And it's a great pleasure, and we'll see you in Cannes, Anand, and see everybody else in Cannes. Look forward to it. Thank you very much.